Welcome to the Traveling Professors. I'm Professor Bob.
And I'm Professor Sheri.
And together, we are
the Traveling Professors.
Welcome to show number 79, a walking tour of the Baths of Diocletian. So what Sheri and I did after we went to the Borghese Museum is once we were finished, we simply walked back down the streets and went all the way to where Diocletian's baths, or what's left of them, are located, which is right by the main central railroad station. It's a nice, relaxing, downhill walk to that area. Now, what we'll be seeing is a complex, because the Diocletian's bath also includes the Museum of Rome and several other things, and you have to enter into the museum to see the rest of the surrounding parts, including the church that's built inside the baths. Now, our route to the Diocletian baths is pretty direct, so we'll leave up here on the other side of the Ed, and we're basically going to come down this direction, go by the Hard Rock Cafe, and head down to the Piazza De Republica, which right on the other side is where Diocletian's baths are located. Now, it's funny because on this map you'll see that it says Santa Maria della Angeli. Well, that's on the inside of the baths. So this whole area is basically Diocletian's bath, but it is now part of the Museum of Rome. So there are a lot of different parts that have been added into this particular complex. Okay, so as we leave the park, we come to the main gate on the Roman walls, and after going through it, and I have a picture down one side, it's quite a bit of the Roman wall left, but it would take you a while to walk around most of the city. And then here's a view down the other side where you can get a little better shot of the walls and the fortifications, again built by Marcus Aurelius. And then we just start walking towards our goal, Diocletian's bath. We stopped by one of the places here where they were serving breakfast and lunch and other things. Just walked on by, nice enclosed area, so you could eat out but yet be enclosed. And then we go by various artwork, other municipal buildings, and then we're starting to see Piazza De Republica, which is a circular rotary, but it has two semicircular buildings, which you see here. So when you reach the central point, then this is what you see, is one set of buildings on one side, one on the other, beautiful fountain on the inside. And then you have to be careful because this is one area where there are quite a bit of scams. There were people wanting to sign petitions. There were people selling objects and items and all sorts of different things. It's someplace you want to be a little careful of. Probably pickpockets in the region as well, but you'll find them everywhere. But around the train station, there is quite a congregation of these sort of things. And then later on, before we finish, I'll talk about a little more ominous scam that we ran into. So we finally made it down to where it's supposed to be. So you're looking out here saying, well, wait a minute, I don't see Diocletian's baths. Well, they're behind me. Here is an artist's rendition of what the baths of Diocletian looked like in ancient times from a nice aerial perspective. You have to kind of be careful because actually the Emperor Maximian, who actually shared imperial power with Diocletian, built this complex of baths between 298 and 306 AD on his return from Africa. Now this whole space, and notice it has fortifications around it. This whole space covered an area of 376 by 361 meters, or 1,233 feet by 1,184 feet. And they claim it could accommodate 3,000 people. I would bet that it would actually hold more than that, having been in it. There is an inscription inside that praises the size and the equipment of this mighty building, which outdid all the other baths in Rome in extent and magnificence. And it ran as a bath until 537, when the Goths destroyed the Aqua Marcia, which supplied the water. And then, of course, after that, it fell into decay, and so it was used as barns, granaries, stables, and, of course, a source of stone. In modern times, things have changed. Now, here is an aerial view of the site as you see it today. You notice in this, there's a big square garden, and that's put in the 17 or 1800s. You have a museum over here, which is the Museum of Rome. The rest of the area is basically Diocletian's baths. There's also a Catholic church built right into this region right here. Now, this is another aerial view of a rendition of what it looked like in ancient times, and it shows a little bit better the ground plan. Now, you can see the walls around it, and it's a typical pattern for thermal baths in the ancient world. It's just gigantic. There's a central axis which splits the complex into two symmetrical halves. In the center, there's a large basilica with a cold water pool, a frigidarium. And then on either side, on one side there's a nasio, which is an open-air swimming pool, and on the other a warm pool, a trepidarium. And then there's also a hot pool called a caldarium. And both sides there were sporting grounds, there were changing rooms. The rooms along the enclosing wall contained libraries and auditoriums, and the wall itself opened out to a north area, which is this region, a semicircle area here, which looks like it should be a pool, but it's not. It's called an exedra, and this is where you had shops, where you can buy all sorts of things, as well as do recreation. It looks like it's a little stadium situation, so it's a very significant complex. Now, if you look at a model of what's left of it today, you see that the area where you had the people selling the shops, that's been turned into this square garden. But the rest of the building is left over from ancient times, just repurposed. And then here's a view from the front. So you see the Piazza De Republica, you see the fountain, see the people in front, and it would look like you could just walk in this direction. That's a no-go. If you're going to go visit it, you have to come in another direction. But you can see through here. Now, it looks pretty large. No matter what you take a picture of, until you get in it to get a little more perspective, that's when you can see how big it is. So we actually have to walk around it in order to get in. So as we're walking towards the entrance, here you have the edifice. The church is just back in here. Then we're going around the corner, down the side. And you see the sides of the buildings. There would have been a pool here that's been filled in, covered over. A shot of one of the buildings towards the back. Here's some more of the area of the Diocletian's baths. And then we're coming all the way around the corner, and we see another guard area. And that's where we're going to be able to get in, because you have to go in the Museum of Rome in order to access the interior of all of this. Now, using this aerial view, here's how you get in. Go down this direction, around the corner, go by the garden area, and then you enter right through this gate, and this is the Museum of Rome. So as we get around to the right location, here's the entry gate. See one of the pieces of the bath over here. Now this is looking right down towards the entrance of the main building. They have all kinds of different sculptures, sarcophagi and whatever in this area. And then here's a view of the front of the museum, which houses lots of documents and all sorts of statues and all sorts of incredible collection. And then here is a model, and we are right here, coming right in through this direction. So we'll take a quick tour of the museum, which is this here, this rectangle. Then we'll go into the exedra, into the square garden area, and then we will end up going finally, into the baths, actually into the church. Well, one of the first displays we saw in the museum was this magnificent bronze muscle armor from the early Republic, a really rare piece. So they had all sorts of different weapons and what have you, and so here's a side view of the armor. And the helmet, the eyes over it. You can see the Greek influence here. And you notice it has a couple of little inserts. There's one over here on the side where you would have had a feather or something to denote rank. And they would have had something similar across the top. Then as you turn out into the main room, you see this, way in the back there, this set of statues. So here we have a set of these 4 women. Then we wandered around, and you can see the cases, because they have lots of small objects in here. And then you come to this beautiful bronze, what's left of one of the statues of probably an athlete of some sort. And then we have a little bit more warfare stuff. Here we have lead bullets that would have been put in slings. It was not uncommon for the Romans to kind of copy the Greeks, because some of these will have imprints of the general, or the troops that are throwing these at somebody, so you get the idea of who's attacking you. In one display, they have this very large piece of lead pipe. This is about 4 inches across at its opening here. Nice little display of what would have probably been a gladiator incendiary, where they would have put their ashes. Now this one that you see here is a funeral slab of a gentleman named Fuchsius, who was a green faction charioteer. The Romans had 4 factions, red, green, blue, and yellow. And he died, according to this, died at the age of 24, but he'd won 52 victories in Rome. Now, that does not necessarily mean in the Circus Maximus, but in the various racing venues. This unique item here is another funeral slab It was purchased by Ulpia Priscilla to honor her husband, Ephesius, an imperial freedman who was an invitator. That's a man who compiles the emperor's guest lists and sends out notes to them for parties. And the center area is kind of a drain to drain off water. Then this item is an iron collar with a bronze plate, and the inscription is, quote, "Whoever should see this would-be runaway whose collar it was attached to stop him and bring him back to his owner Zonius, with the promise of a money reward that was a gold coin." Now, they didn't put these on all slaves, but anyone who was thought to be a risk of running off, well, they got one of these with the notice of who owned him and that there would be a reward. From the second floor, this is a view out to where we came in. Then we went around the corner and then this really interesting religious section. So here we have this gold-plated idol. It's a veiled male that is wrapped in a snake set of coils. They have pictures of where they found it. And they believe that this is an unknown Eastern deity. And there's an annual ceremony where the statuette was dug up to be shown to the followers and then reburied with seeds, which symbolize death and rebirth of an endless cycle of nature. And then this picture that you see, this is Mithras. This is an Iranian god. He's a solar deity, represents social stability and royal power. And this cult came to Rome about 56 AD. His followers tended to be male military. And there were 7 initiation steps, and worship was held in rectangular underground chambers with an apse and long tables. Frequently in some of the catacombs, you'll find some of these Mithra religious worship sections. And then the statue is, of course, Isis, and she comes to Italy about 300 BCE. And, of course, Cleopatra was restart the Isis worship with her as a reincarnated Isis, and she was trying to convince everybody that Mark Antony was the reincarnated Dionysius. And so they did this for quite a while. Scandalized Rome, to say the least. Our next stop is going to be the gardens in this area here. 1884, when the Kingdom of Italy's seat of government was moved to Rome, an area in this region, and actually where the museum building is, as well as this square area, was part of a Carthusian monastery. Well, that was abandoned, and there were substantial changes made. This is also at the same time when the Roman Termini train station was put in place, and the Ministry of Economy moved into the area, and the Grand Hotel was constructed, as well as the designing of the front part of the Piazza De Republica. This would have been part of the Exedra. There may have been 2 of them. There have been a larger one in the back and one in the front. So here's the view of the garden from up on the second floor. And then here we are looking towards the central feature, which of course is a fountain in there. And of course all around it are different types of statues. You have some columns. And so you have each of these rows, each of these lines that move into the central fountain. So here's the central fountain. And then in each of the areas, each of the quadrants or the 5 or 6 spaces, they have these gigantic animal heads. You have a horse, a bull, a rhinoceros. I love the elephant, and of course the ram. And then this is looking back to the museum from the other side, the fountain in the middle. And then as we get ready to go into the church, we've found this painting on the wall which shows a Carthusian monk as if it's a door telling you to be quiet. I know, we've been waiting and waiting. Where's Diocletian's baths? All right, now we're going to go in there. We are going to go out through here into this open area and then enter the church. So here's a view of where we're headed from that second floor. And then this is a cutaway view of the baths as it would have appeared at the time of Maximian and Diocletian. And literally, the churches are right in here, right through here. And as you walk in, this is what you end up seeing. Under Pope Pius IV, who was Pope from 1559 to 1565. And what he did was he gave this site, the baths, to the monks of Santa Croce in Jerusalem. And Michelangelo converted the central hall of the baths into the church of Santa Maria degli Angeli. And work began on the conversion in 1563. 2 axes of the ground plan, in the shape of a Greek cross with 4 side chapels, relate to the old basilica, the Caldarium, and the Trepidarium. The floor level had to be raised 2 meters, 6.5 feet, to keep the interior dry. Now, the ancient plinths of the columns were therefore, they disappeared beneath the floor and were replaced by a new structure. There have been various restorations, extensive renovations carried out in 1749 by Van Vitelli, and he turned the main hall into the transept and made it difficult to see Michelangelo's original concept. However, the monolithic columns of red granite and the mighty groined vaulting in the present transept gave the same idea of appearance of the baths of antiquity. And then in 1576, Gregory XIII, who was Pope from 1572 to 1585, built granaries, which were later extended, and this is where a round church of St. Bernardo alle Terme was built at the end of the 1500s in one of the 4 corners of the enclosure wall. So this view that you are seeing is actually the whole length of the original basilica. And here's the view of the ceiling with the vaults. And of course, Sheri took a picture of me. I'm standing in the middle of the circular region, and you have one section of the church, and then there's all of these different spokes. So here's the view up to the oculus, the light at the top, which is covered. And then here's one section of the vaulting where you have the painting, and this usually goes right directly over the altars. Look at the people in comparison to the size of the church. So this shows one of the areas, one of the altar areas. Here's another altar. It's a little closer view because you can see in this one they've moved an organ in years later when those were available, and here's a nice picture showing that particular organ. And then this is looking from that altar straight out down the center. And so you see again the vaulting with some of the lighting, and then again it's altar, the various side altars, and this is the main altar here. And then this is the flooring at the underneath the center region. You can see why at the beginning I said that this certainly would allow more than 3,000 people to come in, because this is just one little section of it. Now we exited right through here onto the street, and so we get some views of the backside, and so we're going to walk down this direction and then head to the metro and then head back to the Coliseum, to our apartment. So here's a shot that I took where we exited and then came out on the street, and it's when we were on the street that we had this incident. We're walking along and talking, and this car pulls up, the windows roll down, and the guy has a uniform on, and he says, "Are you Americans?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I need to see your passport." Well, I knew there were kind of scams about getting passports, but this was a little different. So actually, Sheri and I do not carry our passports with us. We carry secondary ID, our driver's license. So I walked over and I said, "I need to see your credentials." And he flipped open his wallet, and you saw something. And I said, "I'd like to see the driver's credentials as well." Well, he didn't have any. So I backed away and I said, "Now, I don't have my passport. This is all I have is my driver's license." And at that point, they drove off down the street. So if somebody pulls up on the street and does that, do not give them your passport and don't get too close to them. So that was a little disconcerting, and probably the only time in all the travels that we've been that we felt that way. So we're now walking around the building. So here's some of the one side of the baths. There's another one of the sections where the church is on the other side of that, and you can see some of the mosaics down here. They've been excavating the mosaics. I got a little better shot of it with a different camera. So here you can see the mosaics that have resurfaced. Then we end up back out on the street, and we're heading towards, there's the Termini station, and we went in there and got on our metro and headed to the Coliseum exit. And by that time we're hungry, so we then went to our regular restaurant where we ate the whole time we were in Rome, the Bostaria a Nerone, and this is the interior of it. We usually sat on the street if they had space, but otherwise we would be in here, and they had all kinds of delicious Italian food. Sheri and I hope you enjoyed the tour. Please come by our YouTube channel at Bob Packett, and please subscribe and leave some comments. Thank you very much. I've been doing podcasting on history for over 15 years. I've got over 4,000 shows, and I've done CDs, which of course can be sent out as USBs. So if you would really like to get more on history for free, then come by my website, as you see here, historyaccordingtobob.com, and see what's there. So thank you very much again.